finding the best way to help your kid learn, especially when it's not always easy, with autism and all that.
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is super important. We're diving into this article called Homeschooling, a unique option for autistic children.
Yeah, and we're going way beyond just listing pros and cons, We really want to help you figure out if homeschooling could be the right fit for your family.
Because it's such a big decision.
It really is.
And we want to make sure you've got all the info.
And, a lot of times we think about the traditional school system and it's trying to do right, it's trying to help, but it doesn't always get it right, especially with neurodivergent kids.
Yeah, and the article, it really made me think about that. Take IEPs, for example, individualized education programs. They sound great in theory, right?
Right.
But are they actually designed to help a child use their strengths? It reminded me of this friend. Her son loves to draw, crazy talented. But he was always getting pulled out of art class for extra speech therapy.
Oh.
And he just felt like he was being punished for needing help,
Yeah.
And it's like the system that's supposed to be supporting him is actually holding him back in a way.
And it's almost like we forget that autism isn't a deficit, it's a different way of thinking, like neurodiversity. What if instead of focusing on what they struggle with, we help them blossom based on what they're passionate about?
And the article had this amazing example of a kid who was obsessed with trains.
Okay.
And the parents, they used homeschooling to weave that passion into everything. Math problems about train schedules.
Wow.
Reading stories about historic train journeys, even field trips to train museums.
That's amazing.
It became this incredible learning experience, all because it was driven by something he loved.
It makes such a difference when kids are engaged like that.
Right. And that's what's so cool about homeschooling. You can customize it.
You have that flexibility.
And you brought up sensory overload before. Just imagine a typical school day. You've got fluorescent lights buzzing, kids yelling in the hallway, bells ringing every hour.
It's a lot.
It's overwhelming. And for a child with sensory sensitivities, it can be unbearable. The article described how some kids actually regress in those environments because it's just too much sensory input to handle.
Yeah, so they're constantly on high alert.
Exactly. And you can't exactly just turn down the lights or tell everyone to whisper in a traditional school, right?
No, not really.
But at home, that's where homeschooling has this huge advantage. You have control. You can dim the lights, use noise-canceling headphones, create a quiet space. It's all about reducing distractions so the child can actually focus on learning.
It makes you wonder how much of what gets labeled as difficult behavior is actually just a reaction to an environment that isn't working.
Totally. And that's what really struck me about this article. Homeschooling isn't just about where your child learns, it's about how.
You got it. It's about tailoring the entire experience to the child.
The pace, the methods, the materials.
Imagine a child who learns best by doing, a kinesthetic learner. Suddenly, the whole world is their classroom. Baking becomes a chemistry lesson, gardening is botany, building a birdhouse is woodworking and engineering.
I love that.
And the best part, it doesn't feel like schoolwork to them. It feels like exploration, which honestly is how we all learn best.
It's tapping into that natural curiosity we all have as kids, instead of stifling with worksheets and standardized tests.
Totally.
But, and this is a big but, there's the other side to think about.
Yeah.
The emotional side of making this choice. It's huge. It's a massive decision to make, right? Deciding to take charge of your child's education like that. The article doesn't try to make it seem easier than it is, does it?
No, not at all. Homeschooling has its own unique challenges. It can be a real test of your patience and how well you can adapt, that's for sure.
And the article does a good job of being honest about that. It talks about things like communication challenges, which can be especially difficult with autistic kids. How do you bridge that gap when you're both still figuring each other out?
Connecting with the wider autism community can be a lifeline, The article mentions finding autistic self-advocates. These are people who've lived it, both as individuals on the spectrum and many times as parents, too. They can offer insights that you just wouldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
They've dealt with those communication hurdles firsthand.
Exactly.
Tried different things, and they can share strategies that no book can really teach you.
It's like finding your people, the ones who truly get it.
Exactly.
And it's not just about support, it's about representation, too.
Oh, absolutely.
When your child sees adults on the spectrum thriving, speaking up for themselves, it changes everything.
It's huge.
It shows them that their differences are not something to be hidden. They're part of what makes them special.
It's so important for them to see that.
It is. It really is. And that kind of leads into another practical thing the article brings up. setting up a sensory-friendly learning environment at home. Sounds simple enough,
Right.
but it's surprising how many little things can actually be triggers for sensory overload.
Oh, yeah, you'd be amazed.
I was reading a blog post by an autistic mom. She was talking about how she switched all the light bulbs in their apartment to full spectrum ones because the old fluorescent lights were giving her son migraines.
Wow. It's incredible how much we overlook those things sometimes.
And it's those tiny adjustments that can make or break a child's ability to learn and focus.
It's true. And with homeschooling, you have the freedom to experiment and fine-tune things as you go.
You do.
Like maybe noise-canceling headphones are a lifesaver one day,
Yeah.
but then the next day your child might need some gentle classical music playing in the background. Who knows?
You can adapt to their needs in the moment, which is just not possible in a regular classroom.
And that ability to be responsive, to meet the child where they're at, it can be so powerful.
It can be transformative.
It's not just about academics. You're creating a space where your child feels safe, understood, and empowered to ask for what they need.
And that feeling of empowerment, it extends to social situations too. Because, yeah, homeschooling might give you more control over when and how your child socializes.
Right.
You do have to be more intentional about making sure they're getting those opportunities.
It takes a bit more effort for sure.
And the article had some good tips on that, like starting small,
Yeah.
don't jump right into a huge birthday party if big groups are overwhelming for your child.
Right.
Maybe start with one-on-one play dates with a child who shares similar interests.
That makes sense.
You can even practice different social scenarios beforehand.
That's a great idea.
Give your child the tools and confidence to handle those interactions.
I love that.
And then as they gain confidence, you can gradually broaden their social circle, maybe try some community groups, extracurricular activities, things that match their interests. Because that's another plus with homeschooling, you can tailor those social experiences too.
You have so much more control.
Make sure they're engaging and enriching and not just something you feel obligated to check off a list.
Exactly.
It's about quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Finding those genuine connections that truly nurture your child's well-being.
Because those are the ones that matter.
They are. And of course, through all of this, we can't forget about academics.
Right. That's still a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But again, homeschooling gives you the flexibility to approach it in a way that works for your child. If they thrive on routine and structure, great. Create a schedule that looks like a traditional school day. But maybe they're more free-spirited. Learn best through exploring. That's awesome too. Let their passions guide the way you teach. Turn everyday life into learning opportunities.
I like that. Turning everyday life into learning opportunities.
It's about being willing to throw out the rule book sometimes and create something new that fits your child.
Which is both exciting and terrifying.
Right, for sure. There's no one right way to homeschool, just like there's no one right way to raise a child, especially a neurodivergent one.
You said it. There's no one right way. And that's what I like about this article. It's not telling you what to do. It's more like giving you ideas, helping you trust your own gut feeling.
It is. It's like a guide, you know?
Yeah.
And you're not just homeschooling, you're creating this whole learning experience that's perfect for your child.
It's a lot to think about, but it's also like empowering,
It is empowering. You're taking charge of something so important in your child's education, and you're making it their own, not what everyone else thinks it should be. And, the article does a great job with like the practical stuff, but in the end, it's about what feels right for your family.
Exactly. What feels right for your child. And sometimes that means being brave enough to do things differently.
Yeah.
I think about those families who choose homeschooling, not because they have to, but because they want to,
Right.
because they see the possibilities.
Right. It's about seeing the potential. And this is what I find so interesting. The good things about homeschooling, especially for autistic kids, it's not just about academics.
It's about so much more.
The article touched on this, the idea that when you take away the limits of a traditional school, you're also taking away limits on what your child believes they can do.
It's like you're really saying you can do anything, and you mean it.
Exactly, because you're not stuck with those old ideas of what success means.
Right. Like success might look different for every child.
It might be your child telling you what they need, or getting totally absorbed in something they love, or making a real connection with someone who gets them. These are things that might not get noticed in a regular school.
They might even get overlooked.
But with homeschooling, they become these amazing achievements.
It's about helping them thrive, not just fit in. That's what I'm taking away from this deep dive for sure.
It's a powerful message. And if you're listening and thinking, my child learns differently, just know you're not alone. There are other ways, other paths that might be even better.
Beautifully said. And as we wrap up this deep dive into homeschooling and autism, we want to leave you with this. If you're even considering this for your family, be curious, be open-minded, and most importantly, believe in your child. Dive deeper into the article, get as much info as you can, talk to other families who've been there, and trust your gut as you go on this journey. It's a big one. It can be challenging, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.